Okay. Flynn's is a burst-focused electro carry who does most of his damage through Lunar Charged. The only source of direct damage or direct Lunar Charged damage in his kit is his burst, and his gameplay is focused on maximizing the damage said burst does. We can probably zoom in a little more. 125. I don't want to yap for the sake of yapping. Is there anything else that's, like, necessary to mention as early as possible? I don't think so. Like, there's pros and cons, but we can talk about that in the pros and cons section. I don't think we need anything else in the overview. Pros. We probably want list by confused reader, since it isn't specifically mentioned. I mean, if you're looking for a Flynn's guide and you want to understand how to play him and you just read the first paragraph of the overview and think you're done, that's on you at that point. Because I'll have to mention it again later anyways. Pros. What are the most important pros for Flynn's? Very easy combos and rotations. I think that's probably his biggest pro. Bro is fucking brain dead as hell to play. Uses less contested supports. Uses multiple 4-star supports. And doesn't rely too much on their constellations. Free-to-play friendly? Free-to-play friendly is such a fucking vague concept. I don't like it. It doesn't actually say anything. Like, you're not actually conveying any important information by saying a character is free-to-play friendly. Like, what's a character that isn't free-to-play friendly? Characters that need constellations to be good? Well, another word for that would be bad. Those are bad characters. Just call them bad. Skirk? But Skirk is a pretty free-to-play friendly character. If you're a free-to-play player, Skirk is definitely a character you should consider getting if you're focused on meta. She's not new player friendly because she requires multiple specific 5-stars, but that's different from not being free-to-play friendly. DPS in premium teams is above 100k. Instead of giving a numerical value, I'll say is halfway between the average Natlan carry and Mawika. Low cost teams. I mean, that's already conveyed by this point. Powerful early constellation options. I think that's it for the relevant pros. Reliant on Inefa. Actually, I just thought of another pro. Incredibly strong against Hydro enemies with a Hydro aura, like the Tulpa. Actually, we don't need to say this. It's not relevant often enough to matter. Premium teams have no healing. Only shielding with Inefa. Locked to one archetype can be a con. Honestly, it's not that much of a con in my opinion. I think being locked to one archetype is only a con if that archetype doesn't work against a lot of content. But, like, what sort of content would... I guess, if you're against enemies with innate auras, things can go wrong. Very weak against enemies that prevent you from triggering Lunar Charge. So, he's bad against enemies that have infinite Dendro, or, yeah, infinite Dendro, infinite Electro. No, sorry. Infinite Dendro, infinite Pyro, infinite Cryo. But he's also bad against enemies that have infinite Electro because those enemies are generally Electro immune. So, many innate auras counter him. Pyro, Dendro, and Cryo prevent Lunar Charged, and Electro is often on Electro immune enemies. Is his ability to store energy a pro? I guess it can be. So Versa's just better? I think you could say Versa's more versatile, yeah. But better, I don't know. It depends. Like, Versa doesn't really get countered by any of the innate auras. Right? If the enemy has a Hydro aura, you can still trigger Overload. If the enemy has a Cryo aura, you can just say, okay, well, I just won't play Chevreurs, like, it's fine. I can still play other things. At least Versa's kit still works. If you're against a Pyro aura, you're completely fine. That actually helps you. If you're against a Dendro aura, you can still trigger Overload, right? But, like, enemies with Pyro and Dendro auras, they counter Flynn's, but they don't counter Versa. Are there any other major cons for Flynn's? Better on bosses than mobs? I mean, not that much. I don't think it's a major con. Like, he doesn't really have noticeably good AoE, but he doesn't have bad AoE either. Like, it's fine. Don't really have a good last slot, but that's not really a con, right? Like, him not having a good last slot is something that works against him, and that's accounted for in his team DPS. If anything, it's a pro, because the fact that he doesn't have a good last slot means that his team DPS is likely to go up in the future. But anything that's already accounted for in his team DPS shouldn't be included in the cons, because it's already accounted for in the team DPS. I don't know if there's any other major con. He has one team. I mean, like I said, team versatility doesn't actually matter. What matters is content versatility. And the content versatility is already addressed here. How would his teams perform in multi-wave? Fine. Not being reliant on other good supports is way more important than team flexibility. I agree. Yeah. Alright. So, let's yap a little bit about teams now. Isn't Sucrose an in-demand support? She's not that in-demand. Like, she's good on a lot of teams, but there aren't that many teams where she's significantly better than your alternatives. Right, the teams where you want to use Sucrose are like, you can use her on Malika, but generally she's worse than an Outland unit. You can use her with Molani, and she is the best slot for Molani, but Molani also has other options. You can use her with Sucrose, but... Or, not Sucrose. You can use her with Arlecchino, but Arlecchino also has other options. And that's kind of it for, like, teams where she's actually, like, a great slot. Obviously, there's National, but it's 2025. Let it go. Flynn's fairly low energy generation paired with his burst reliance makes him dependent. Is that how you write dependent? Or is it an E instead of an A? On a battery. Okay. It's auto-correcting me. A is British, E is American? That's crazy. Makes them dependent on a battery. Electro particles generate much more energy for him than particles of other elements. Pairing him with an electro character is almost mandatory. Flinn's burst his main source of damage. Increases or has its damage Flinn's burst has its damage increased more than twofold if you've recently triggered Lunar Charged. So a Hydro character is also almost mandatory. Your last team slot is a bit more flexible, but will generally be best used by a character that provides buffs rather than damage. The battery slot. Electro particles from your battery slot. I don't need to capitalize this. And from electro resonance. Are very important. However, Flinn's and very important, bro, use an adverb when critical exists. You're actually so right. You're so right. Of paramount importance, true. Actually, can't you just use paramount by itself? That's actually better than critical. You're right. However, Flinn's can use many tricks to cheat out additional energy and make the most of the energy he gets. So the difference between electro batteries that provide a large amount of particles and ones that only provide a few isn't particularly significant. And your main focus should be on how much damage they deal and how much they buff Flinn's damage over how many particles they generate.